Hello students, thank you for tuning in. This is your next video on your anonymous post-it notes, and this section is going to cover how to deal with parents and families. And so there's some good questions here, and I can tell there's some concern about how to deal with students who have trouble at home and maybe how to deal with some parents that maybe are a little more difficult or perceived that way. So first off, the first question says, how to help students who are having problems at home and bring them to school. So this is something that you really cannot control. If a kid is having some trouble at home and they're going to be worrying about that issue, they're going to be suffering some of the consequences of that problem, that's inevitable, and there's not really much you can do to avoid it, but you can help, as this person is asking. So I think some good ways to help is, first off, letting students, if they're old enough, write about whatever they want, maybe like a journal or creative writing or free writing time, and tell them to write about anything they're thinking about, anything that they are concerned about or worrying about or excited about or happy about. Any feelings they have, they can write about it. And I think that if you assure them that this isn't going to go home and I'm not going to grade it, it's just for you to write. And sometimes I've even heard of some teachers allowing kids to write in journals and letting them pick the journal entries that they want you to read. I think that's a nice outlet for students. Another option in the same vein would be art. Allowing kids to express themselves through art is a good way to help them get some of those emotions out there and start talking about what they're worried about so that you can help them a little bit better. I think if you have a kid who you know is struggling because of home life issues and there's nothing you can really do to step in and correct that as their teacher, but you're sensitive to it, you can implement things in class that allow them to give you a signal when they're having a bad day. So I had a student once who was going through a lot emotionally with his family and is also his personal health, which was a real big issue for him at the time. And so we had a signal because he had a lot of anger problems that he was having trouble controlling. We had a signal between us that he would ask for a water break, and I let him go outside. He had a little area where he could hang out, where I could see him outside the classroom, and he could just sit out there for 5 minutes. And I think that's a good tactic for older students. I don't think that's a good idea for really young students, but you can have kind of a cool down area in your classroom if you feel like kids just need to kind of put themselves in a little timeout, not in a consequential kind of in trouble way, but a way to just have a place where they can chill and relax for a few minutes if they're upset, where no one's going to bother them. And I think that's a good thing to do if you have students who are maybe experiencing trauma or have some anger issues or just having a hard time concentrating because of home issues. I think some other ways to think about dealing with this sort of problem would be to have the kid report to you how they think they're doing each day, or set goals for themselves, because a lot of times this impacts their academics and their behavior. So have them set some goals and then implement some positive rewards for them communicating with you and achieving those goals. I think sometimes for some kids, just sitting down to talk with your teacher each day should be rewarded with a praise or some kind of extra attention of some sort, something that they like, some kind of incentive, because that might be enough to correct some of the problems. The next question asks, how can you overcome the struggle of confrontation with parents? And the next question also asks, how do you deal with parents in situations where you might have said the wrong thing? The next question says, how do you deal with parent drama? So these are all pretty similar. I would say asking similar questions, but with a little different kind of a spin on it. The first one sounds more like this person is worried that they're going to be afraid to confront parents or talk with them. I understand that. Some parents can be kind of intimidating, but it's important to remember that their child is the most sensitive thing you can talk about with a person. So as long as you begin every conversation with how much you enjoy having that kid in your class, what you love about that kid, and how you are dedicated to helping them be successful in your class, and reminding parents of that, always talking in a very positive tone with parents instead of a negative tone. Never assume you know better than a parent when it comes to how their child needs to be treated and dealt with and what their child's problems are. Even if you believe you know better, that is still not your child. So it's important to respect that parent's opinion and their time and what they believe is best. That doesn't mean that you let the parent run your class. You are still to be respected as the expert when it comes to instruction and running your classroom. So there's two distinctions to make there. First off, you tell the parent, you're an expert on this child. You know them better than me. I want your opinions on what works and how to help them. But I am the expert on this curriculum and what we're going to do. So these are the goals we must meet. You and I can work together to meet these certain goals. That's the way you want to approach those conversations. Anytime you feel that there's going to be or has been a negative interaction with a parent, I highly encourage you to just include your administrator. Have them come sit in on that meeting, even if it feels a little bit extreme. You're not tattling, you're not getting them in trouble because it's your boss, not theirs. So it is important that your administrator just knows what you're trying to do and supports you on those things. The other question that asked about, what do you do if you said the wrong thing? I think the first thing, if you said the wrong thing, is just admit it and say sorry. There's nothing wrong with saying, I apologize, I shouldn't have said this. This was misinterpreted, or I said something that maybe came off wrong and I shouldn't have said it that way. This is what I really meant. This is what I should have said. I think those are okay statements to make. And I think that there's really very little pursuit they can go beyond that with complaining. If you've already apologized, there's really not much else they can do. Even if they were offended, most parents will just accept that and move on. So I would say if you feel really like you did the wrong thing, just admit it. Include your administrator and tell them you are trying your best to learn better ways to handle this sort of thing, and you appreciate their patience, and this is what you meant to say or what you should have said, and you want to keep working with them to help their kid. I think that's okay. I think there's nothing wrong with that. We all make mistakes, and parents will probably appreciate the honesty. The other question was about parent drama, and I think the example they give is one student is always hitting another, and the parents blame you and the student's parents. They're also very aggressive. So it depends on who's being aggressive here. Is the student being aggressive or the parents being aggressive? Sometimes it's both. I've seen that on occasion. I think it's important, again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but include your administrator. Have them sit in on those meetings with you. Make sure that you report to them every time you have any kind of interaction with that parent. Also, record every detail of what happens in class with that student. It's all about keeping good records to show that the student is still having this problem, and you want to also show on your records what you have tried to do to address this problem. Not just to show your kid did this many times, but to show your kid did this many times, and this is all the things I've tried to do to help. These are all the consequences, these are all the incentives, these are all the rewards, these are all the changes I've made, this is all the stuff we've tried already. And when you do that, I think that that is helpful. If you are afraid for your safety when it comes to a child or their parent, then definitely you need to include your school security and your administrator and potentially even campus police. Your school district has a police officer that's assigned to your school. You might want to talk to that person if it gets that far. That kind of thing is very few and far between. In most cases, parents are upset because they feel like their child might be attacked or mistreated, or they feel on some kind of spotlight for being a bad parent, and you want to make sure that you are communicating that that's not your intent. In general, most parents want their kid to be successful. And as long as you get on the same team as them from the beginning and make sure that's clear, they will help you out. And that's important to remember, okay? So you're all on the same team, make that very clear. Include a lot of incentives and positive things. Ask those parents' opinions, get their input, show that respect to them. And I think those things will all help you out. A few more tips for involving parents in your classroom would be to not be afraid to ask them to help out with teaching a lesson. Come in and lead an activity. I think a lot of times parents get left out and told to just do menial tasks when they volunteer, and they have a lot of expertise that we should be tapping into. Ask them to contribute in a way that they feel comfortable. If you have parents that really don't want to do that, then that's okay, but you can send a lot of notes home. You can send a lot of updates. A lot of teachers are doing wonderful things with technology to communicate with parents, with text messages, using Remind. emails and lists through a website. There's all kinds of things you can do to involve parents and keep them happy with technology. So I would definitely explore those things as well. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope this helped you out.